Genesis chapter 35, verses 1 through 29, KJV, Bible Study and Exposition Script. Opening introduction. Today, we will walk through Genesis, chapter 35, verses 1 through 29 in the King James Version. This chapter marks a spiritual turning point in the life of Jacob. It is not merely a historical account. It is a chapter about returning to God, purification, covenant renewal, identity restoration, sorrow, loss, and legacy. To understand Genesis 35 correctly, we must remember what happened before this. In Genesis 34, we saw moral compromise, violence, and spiritual decline in Jacob's family after settling near Shechem. Jacob had delayed returning to Bethel, the place where God first appeared to him when he fled from Esau in Genesis 28. Now in Genesis 35, God calls Jacob back. This chapter reveals a powerful spiritual truth. When God calls us back to the place of promise, He is calling us back to Himself. God's call to return to Bethel. Genesis chapter 35, verses 1 through 5. 1. Historical context. Bethel means house of God. In Genesis 28, Jacob saw the ladder reaching to heaven. God promised him land, descendants, and covenant blessing. Jacob vowed that if God brought him back safely, the Lord would be his God. Years passed. Jacob prospered in Haran. He returned to Canaan. Yet he did not immediately go to Bethel. Instead, he settled near Shechem. Now God speaks. Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. Genesis 35, verses 1. This is not merely geographical instruction. This is a spiritual summons. 2. Hebrew insight. The word arise in Hebrew qum implies decisive action. God is calling Jacob to spiritual awakening. Before Jacob goes, he commands his household. Put away strange gods. Be clean. Change your garments? This reflects ancient Near Eastern purification. Rituals before encountering deity. Spiritually, this means you cannot return to the house of God while holding on to idols. 3. Theological meaning. Jacob's family had foreign gods, likely from Laban's household or Shechem culture. This teaches a profound truth. Even chosen families can accumulate hidden idols. God's covenant requires holiness. When they bury the idols under the oak tree, it symbolizes death to former allegiances. 4. Spiritual application for today. Many believers experience Shechem seasons, compromise, delay, distraction, but God still says, return to Bethel. Returning to Bethel today means repentance, purification, renewal of worship, restoration of first love. Before revival comes, idols must be buried. 2. Covenant reaffirmed, the name Israel confirmed, Genesis chapter 35, verses 6 through 15. When Jacob arrives at Bethel, God appears again. God says, Thy name is Jacob, thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. Verses 10, 1. Identity transformation. Jacob means supplanter. Israel means prince with God, or he struggles with God, though God renamed him earlier in Genesis 32. Here the name is reaffirmed publicly and covenantally. This shows God does not define us by our past failures, but by his covenant purpose. 2. Covenant theology. God repeats Abrahamic promises. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and company of nations. Kings shall come from thee. The land given to Abraham and Isaac. This is covenant continuity. God is faithful across generations. 3. Theological significance. This chapter connects Abraham promise, Isaac inheritance, Jacob transformation. God's redemptive plan is unfolding toward Messiah. Bethel becomes a place of altar and pillar, again symbolizing worship and remembrance. 4. Spiritual insight. There are moments when God calls us back not to punish us, but to reaffirm his promises. Bethel moments are not about condemnation. They are about identity restoration. 3. Sorrow on the journey. The death of Rachel. Genesis chapter 35, verses 16 through 20. Immediately after covenant renewal comes sorrow. Rachel dies giving birth to Benjamin. 1. Hebrew perspective. Rachel names him Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. Jacob renames him Benjamin, son of my right hand. This shift is powerful. Sorrow does not get the final word. Destiny does. 2. Theological reflection. Even in obedience, suffering occurs. Returning to Bethel does not eliminate pain, but God's covenant stands even in loss. Rachel's death marks end of one era, birth of future tribe. Benjamin's tribe later produces King Saul, Apostle Paul. God brings destiny from sorrow. 3. Spiritual application. Sometimes after spiritual renewal, we expect ease. Instead, God deepens us through sorrow. Obedience does not guarantee comfort. It guarantees God's presence. IV. Failure within the family. Genesis chapter 35, verses 21 through 22. Reuben sins with Bilhah. This brief verse reminds us, spiritual renewal does not remove human weakness. The covenant line continues not because of perfection, but because of grace. The generations completed death of Isaac. Genesis chapter 35, verses 23 through 29. The chapter closes with the listing of Jacob's 12 sons. This is foundational. The 12 tribes of Israel are now complete. Isaac dies at 180 years old. Esau and Jacob bury him together. Reconciliation closes the patriarchal generation. Major spiritual themes in Genesis 35. 1. Return. God calls his people back to holy ground. 2. Repentance. Idols must be buried. 3. Identity. God reaffirms who we are in him. 4. Covenant. His promises continue across generations. 5. Sorrow and destiny. Pain does not cancel purpose. 6. Legacy. God works beyond one lifetime. Understanding God's will in Genesis 35. God's will in this chapter reveals he desires restored worship. He requires purity before intimacy. He reaffirms covenant identity. He allows sorrow to shape destiny. He completes what he begins. The movement of this chapter shows a spiritual progression. Shechem, Bethel. Compromise, consecration. Delay, obedience. Fear, covenant, assurance. Application for the modern believer. Today, Bethel may represent returning to prayer, rebuilding personal altar, restoring family worship, letting go of cultural idols, reclaiming spiritual identity. God may be saying, arise, go back to Bethel. And when we obey, he meets us again, not with condemnation, but with covenant. Closing reflection. Genesis 35 teaches us that spiritual maturity is not a straight line. There are failures, there are losses, there are delays, but God remains faithful to his covenant purpose. If we return to him, he restores us. If we bury idols, he reaffirms identity. If we walk through sorrow, he births destiny. And when our generation ends, his promises continue. Thank you.